media intrusion into celebrities' lives when they become sick, and there seems to be a lot of it recently. We're all watching on the news Farrah Fawcett tonight releasing a bit of a video diary, and apparently she did that because she wanted to tell her story on her terms, and she's furious, according to reports, about the media and the paparazzi invading what the media call her final days. Whether or not that's quite true or not, I'm not sure. But how do we feel about that? I mean, I suppose common sense would tell me most people would think give them their dignity in their dying days. Is that where we're coming from on this issue?
I think you touched right on it then, Tim, when you said, that media intrusion and labelling those days as a chapter. I know Patrick Swayze was very scathing in the media in his battle with pancreatic cancer, that it seems every couple of weeks, there's a report about Swayze farewelling his family. And he talks about how painful that is for his family, because obviously hope and fighting a disease and having these reports circulate is quite damaging to the family's sort of optimism.
With Patrick Swayze, the report came out, it was probably a good 9 weeks ago now, and the headline around the world was Patrick Swayze says his final goodbyes to his family. That was reported all over the place. On 9MSN in Australia, they have a popularity count on their internet site. I don't know if either of you have noticed this. And one of their most popular clicked-on stories, it's always in the top 5, is Patrick Swayze says final farewell to his family. So people want to read it for a start. But, I mean, it was blatantly inaccurate. It's been up there for 9 weeks as one of the top 5 most popular stories.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that's, it's very immoral, I think, especially intruding at that stage, in a celebrity or not, in that stage of someone's life. Obviously, in the fight for their life, they want to maintain that hope and optimism of fighting it and focus on those things. And to have those kind of stories circulating, I don't know.
But Mel, let's get real here. I mean, we talk about, it's terrible and it's an invasion of privacy, but if people like us weren't talking about it, and if we weren't looking at the articles and particularly looking at the photographs that they get of these poor people when they're going through their treatments and in their final days, there would be no story. So are we really pointing the finger in the right direction?
Well, that's it. You said it exactly right when you said that that we want to hear it. We want to see these stories because, as celebrities, in some ways, they become part of our. We get to know them. We feel as though we know them. So It affects us when we do hear that someone we love or respect has gotten sick. So the paparazzi is really just responding to what the popular or what the population wants to read. I suppose I definitely believe that they should be given their distance, and I believe not just when they do fall sick or dying, but even in other instances like small babies and things like that, where the paparazzi will just go and attack these people and often put them in situations that makes them uncomfortable or scared just because that's a better photo. I think that's terrible, but it's because we like to read those stories.
Well, we do. And Adam, have you seen the photos of Patrick Swayze looking gaunt?
There's a big distinction, I think, between idolising and loving celebrities and wanting to read about them. That's fair enough for the public to want to crave that information, but the point to really take out is that they don't want to be reading fraudulent information and information that's just not true because certain media agencies are just interested in getting that story because obviously they know that there's a big interest value in the particular celebrity, especially at a time when they're very sick. To peddle misinformation, I don't think you can put that or attribute that down to supply and demand and people wanting to know about those celebrities. I think it still comes back down to the media being immoral in circulating things that just aren't true.
What interests me is that of all the celebrities that I've mentioned there in the beginning, Farrah Fawcett, Patrick Swayze, there's Jade Gooding, who was a UK Big Brother celebrity who died under extreme public spotlight, and she brought that on herself because she welcomed the media into her final days. What interests me is that all of those celebrities that I've mentioned there, they have all invited the media at some stage during their battle with their illness. So, I mean, I know it's a terrible thing to say about someone who is dying, but is it hypocrisy on one hand to say, they're invading my life, but at the same time, because they've lived in the spotlight and they've had the focus on them so much, they seem to want to even talk about their final days in the format of an interview. They all have done it.
Look, perhaps that's their tool, Tim. They, rather than sit there and be the subject of misinformation, but to actually go directly to the media, maybe they may feel as if their last option to actually circulate the truism of the situation.
Maybe cornered into doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a machine. Like, the media is a bit of a machine sometimes, and it's going to churn out a story about you. It's probably best, I would imagine, from some of their perspectives, to have control over some of the content at least. And like with Patrick Swayze having the interview with Barbara Walters, was he was the only person that she was the only person that he'd speak to, and obviously I think he didn't want to speak about it for a long time, but I think a lot of those stories just tended to culminate in him wanting to get it out in the open. And make sure that the right story's out there. The fact that he isn't going to be dying tomorrow, he is fighting this thing. His family does have hope, and and this misinformation is damaging to his family.
Okay, and Mel, just to wrap up on this, how does it make you feel knowing that you have contributed to the cycle, having looked at photos that have been published of Farrah Fawcett coming out of a chemotherapy centre, Patrick Swayze on the movie set looking very gaunt and sickly? Do you personally take any responsibility for the whole cycle?
Do I feel guilty for reading stories about that?
Surely we must, if we're going to be criticising them for publishing it. Surely we must feel guilty about looking at it.
I've never really thought about it. I guess I don't feel guilty when I read something in a magazine because it's there to be read.
I'm not saying you should. I'm just wondering if you do.
I guess I never really thought of it like that.
Because I feel like a real voyeur when I look at those photos. I have to admit, I look at it and I do feel a sense of guilt. Like, oh, really, that man. Obviously, this was taken with a long distance lens. He was minding his own business. He's doing his shopping. He's coming out of an arcade, and now I'm looking at it. And tut-tutting, I'm such a hypocrite. I'm tut-tutting at the photographer, and in fact, I'm the one looking at the photo that he took.
But do you think, Tim, that it's, really the consumer's responsibility to make sure the content has a proper validity to it, that, that it is accurate? I mean, I think that still comes down to a responsibility of whoever's getting that information out there. As consumers, we don't know generally, what the factual content of these stories are. I think you tend to take it for granted, that there's some truth in a lot of these stories. It's like when you buy a Woman's Day, Mel, I'm sure, that same argument applies, that they're gossip rags, that, you're buying something that may not be entirely factually accurate, and that seems more relevant to me, in that you're peddling the cycle. There's a supply and demand principle there. But with these kind of stories, specifically when you're dealing with someone dying and things like that, I don't know. To me, I don't think the consumer has as big a responsibility in that, because they don't know if it's factually accurate or not.
Maybe publishers need to have a line of good taste, I suppose. But realistically, we all know, we can talk about it till the cows come home, but if there's a market for it, though, they're going to peddle the product.
Absolutely.
And I suppose at the same time, celebrities have to realise if they're going to forge a career and build a fortune on the back of fame and notoriety and public relations, every movement is going to be publicised, unfortunately, including something as hideous as their final days. If you've got something to add to our discussion, give us a call on 6585 2233.